Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video from the news playlist. In this video, we will work on the search functionality of our app. So we will build the search and news paging source as we did with the get news paging source. So first of all, we want to go to the data layer, news API, and we want to implement the search endpoint in here. So let's have a suspend function. And for searching here, we can still search in the same endpoint, everything endpoint, and that's what I'm gonna do. But let's name this function search news. In here, we want to pass the search query, and that's Q. And now we can copy the other queries from here and paste them down. Then we want to add the get request here and make this everything. So we're just gonna use the same endpoint and we can just search using this endpoint. And here we want to return news response. Okay, now we want to implement the paging source. So inside the remote package, let's create a new class and let's call this search news paging source. And just as we did with the news paging source, now, and let's get our API, which is a news API. We want the search query, which is just a string, and we want the sources, which is a string. Now we will extend from paging source. For the key, that will be an integer, and for the data, that would be an articles. And here, let's just override the get refresh key and the load function. So in here, I'm just gonna go to the news paging source. I'm gonna copy the logic we wrote. And now I'm going to go to the news paging source. I'm gonna copy the implementation of get refresh key function and paste it here. Just that's gonna be the same for the load function, and same thing for this function. So I'll copy this, get back here, and I'll paste that. We also want this value, so let's copy it, paste it here, and now let's just rename this news API. Then here we want to search the news and we want to pass the search query. And that is it for this search news paging source. Now we can go to our domain layer, to our repository, and we can just create a new function here to search the news. So let's duplicate this one. We'll get the search query here, which is string, and we're going to return the same thing, but let's change this to search news. Now we can go to the implementation inside the data layer, and we can just implement that. And again, I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, but this time we want to pass the search news paging source, and we want to pass the search query in here. Now let's create the screen. So let's go to the presentation layer. Let me just close all of this, open the presentation layer, and let's create a new package called the search. And here, let's create a new class here called the search state. We have not created that in the home screen because in there we didn't have any state other than our paging 3 state. So, but in here we actually have another state, which is the search query that typed into the search bar, and we want to maintain that into a class. Let's make this data class. In here we can create value, search query, and by default this is an empty string, and I will also put the result that we will get from paging 3 inside here. So let's have our articles in here, which is a flow of paging data that has article, and we can make this null. Now let's create the event, search event. So in here, we want to have two events. The first one is to update the search query. And let's send the search query in the constructor. Then we can extend from search event. And we forgot to make this a sealed class. Then we want to have an object to search the news. So let's create that and we extend it from search event. Now let's create a view model. So new class search view model. Let's set up that. And we want to annotate this with health view model. We want to create the use case. Actually, I have not created the search use case. So let's just inject the news use cases. And let's go to the domain layer inside the use cases, and in use here, let's create a new one. And let's call this search news. So in here, we want the repository. And we want to create an operator function, or I can just go to the get news use case and copy this. And I can just paste it in here. This time we want to search and we want to get the search query. I'll paste that in here. Now we can go to the view model and we can, or before that, we need to go to this wrapper class and we can just add that in here. So search news, and now we can go to the app module and we need to provide that in here. So search news equals to search news and we can pass the repository. Okay, finally, let's get back to the view model. And here we can have a public function on event. And in here we will receive an event from search event and we can have a when block to check what event we get from the UI. So if that search event or search event dot update search query, then we want to update the state that we have not created yet. And if it's search news, then we actually want to search the news. Now let's create our state in here. So private val state, which is a mutable state of, we can make this search news state or search state. That's what I called it. Now we can create a public version of this one. We can cast that to state, so to make it immutable. And we can make this public state. Okay, now in here, as we said, we want to update the search query. We can do that by the following. We make copy of that and we change only the search query to event.searchQuery. And when we click on search news, I'm just going to create a function to search the news. And let's create that. So in here, we can use our use case, the search news use case. So let's do that. So articles equals to news use case, news use cases, search news. And in here, we will pass the search query. Well, we have that in our state, so let's get that. And we have the sources. So I will go to the home view model and copy the sources from there. We can paste them in here. And then don't forget to call cached in view model scope. And finally, we can update our state. So we can say state.value equal to state.value, make copy of that, and we put our articles in here. That's it for this view model. Now let's create a screen. So right click, let's create a new file here called search screen. Portable function search screen. In here we will get the state, which is search state, and we will expose an event, search event, returns unit. So in here we will have a column. Let's add padding. From the top, that would be medium padding 1. From the start, same thing. And from the end, the same thing. Then we want to add status bar padding. And then we can just call our search bar composable function. In here, we will pass state.searchQuery. Read only will be false. On value change, we will add the event. We will send the new string. And here, let me remove this and just call it in here on search. We will call event search event dot search news. Now we can have a spacer and we can make this medium padding 1. And now we can create our articles list so we can make sure that is not null first. State articles and we make a null check. Then we can say articles equals to add.collect as lazy paging items. Then we can have our articles list and we can pass the articles in here. Then on a click, we will navigate to the details screen. So let's actually have navigate string unit, and we call that in here. Okay, so that's it for the search screen. Let's go to our nav graph and let's go here. Let's delete this and let's call search screen and let's change this to search view model. And for the state, we can pass view model dot state dot value on event. Let's keep that empty. Same thing for navigate. Let's preview our search screen. Okay, now here you go. Let's search about sports. It's not changing. Why is that? So here we actually want to call view model on event. And now let's launch the app again. Let's type sports. Search that, and here's the shimmer effect, here's the articles, and yeah, so everything works as we expect. But one thing is the search screen, let's actually give this column fill max size. Okay guys, so that was all for this video. In the next video, we will implement Room database.